Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle Book 11, Dreadgod, Chapters 3 and 4. 2 chapters! In these chapters, Lindon has to convince his friends to stay, even though he can't tell them everything. This is very difficult. And also, he has a really great moment with Jailong. It's so good. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Andy for commissioning this episode. Andy, I want to talk to you real quick for a second. Andy's here in the chat. 1, how dare you? If you had just said, I can't commission anymore, would I be poor? Yes. But would I have gotten to read everything right away? Also, yes. So, thank you, but also rude. 2, I can't tell you guys how much I have been enjoying the reread I've been doing on my own time. These books are one of the most rewarding series to reread of any I've ever read. And Andy, I just thank you for bringing this series into my life. This is low-key becoming like one of my top 3 series ever in all of the things that I have covered. And I just can't imagine how I would have found the series if somebody hadn't commissioned it. I don't know what, it takes so much to get me to read something on my own time because I have so little and I spend most of my free time like consuming media that feels like it can be kind of brainless. And what would I have done not reading these? What a tragedy that would have been. Rob says, I really do hope you do it with Rashawn. Rob, I am definitely covering these with Rashawn. It's a foregone conclusion at this point. Going through this reread has really made me go, oh yeah, no, it's happening. I don't know when I'm going to do it. It might be like after the next couple, because we're doing Ted Lasso now, and then we're planning on covering the Raybearer duology, I think is how that's called, which are great. And then thinking after that, I'm going to do it. Because we covered Ted Lasso because Rashawn loves that show so deeply that she has rewatched the series like 15 or 16 times. More by now, probably. And she's just so in love with it. And I was just like, all right, well, let's do it. And I decided, you know what? I deserve a treat. I deserve to cover something because I just fucking love it so much. And not because I'm just trying to appeal to a very big fandom to get new listeners. And not because I am doing something because it's on trend right now, like House of the Dragon, which is currently airing. But simply because I just love it so much. And as much as I am devastated that the next book that's coming out will be the last in the series, and I don't even really want to talk about it because it's low-key choking me up, I am so glad that it will be ending so that I will know everything and we can cover it as a complete series, which is going to be amazing. So I don't know if Will White listens to these because I know that he's aware of me because I tag him and he retweets me sometimes. And I also got in touch with him to find out how many pages were in this on Instagram before it was announced. And he told me, but I don't think he actually listens. But if he does, Will, I just want you to know, I really am rooting for you. Please don't fuck that up. I know that's a lot of pressure, my man. If there's anything that you can do to just not fuck this up, it will mean so much. Because there are so many hits I can take on authors that I have grown to really like and find out are trash. And I can't take anymore. So I'm just saying, just don't fuck it up. Because you seem great. And if you're not, I straight up don't want to know about it. Just don't say anything. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, that said, this chapter, number 3, is the beginnings of Lindon. So he is here with his Genesis, which is this like hammer that he made in the last book. And we have hardly gotten to see anything with this so far. So I was pretty excited actually to get this like moment of him wielding it and testing out some things. Rob says, honestly, I trust Will a lot, and especially when he says that he's going to take more time on the last book and wrap up loose ends. The only thing I can really fault are the result of him trying to keep his blistering pace. Blistering is the word. Evil says, Will stuck the landing for both Elder Series and Traveler's Gate, so I'm not worried. I haven't reached the end of either of those yet, so I am really interested to see how that goes. I had to stop on Traveler's Gate because I'm doing my reread, and once I start rereading Cradle, it's kind of just over for everything else on my to-read list until that's done. So he is talking to Dross about how he needs a plan. He has to do something to protect all of the people that this Dreadgod named. Literally said their names to him, which I didn't notice that he doesn't mention Zeil, and I'm desperately curious what that's about. I don't know if it's just that Zeil has just seemed like not an issue or hasn't registered, or does he seem too separate from Lindon's crew? I don't know. But this is when he says, let me see this work. And Dross placed the clamshell construct in the soul space. It's the example is the sword path archlady from Everwood with the halo behind her head. Immediately, the Madra from the Silent King's control activated it. Power ran through her Madra channels, and she shivered until the halo disappeared. It will do nothing to resist the Silent King's focused attention, and it can't hold him back from stepping on you. And they have to work on this for a little while. He says, if we use mind enforcer techniques or purify and twist some full body enforcer techniques, there's a version that slowly grinds the control away, like a whetstone grinding away your living bones, one fraction of an inch at a time. First, that's another one to never say again. Make a note. And I love this where he's like, he's saying he's going to not say these anymore, but I'm pretty sure he's just stocking up on a bunch of stuff that he knows is upsetting for me. So we'll see how that goes. And honestly, that was also my thought, was just maybe don't let him know that it gets to you so bad. But he's in his head. So there's really not a whole lot that Lindon can do to hide how he's feeling from Dross. Like, he tries, but it's really clear it's not going to happen. And almost seems like the act of trying to keep Dross from feeling it is what Dross enjoys because it's an indicator of conflict. And Dross just seems all about conflict and drama in this like iteration. I'm saying that it's not what it means in this. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So let's see. In all simulations, it eliminates the parasitic technique. The time required ranges between 18 seconds and roughly 9 minutes. And he has enough to make 6. And we are willing to accept a lapse in performance. If that's all we need, we have the materials on hand. Also, this assumes that we do not need protection ourselves. And he really thinks, he says, we'll be safe. He was certain he could break the Silent King's control with his own willpower. But if it came to that, he also had a spiritual enforcer technique specialized in purifying foreign elements, an arm with stronger hunger madra than the halo technique, and a sage's authority that could be used to remove things, not to mention Dross. Now, I will never accuse Lindon of being overconfident. I really won't. Because as we have seen, he has dramatically underestimated his own abilities a couple of times. And by a couple of times, I mean that's what the series is. But I am worried at how cavalier he feels about this right now. And maybe he is right. The fact that he doesn't tend to overestimate himself speaks in his favor here. I am going to try and trust him because it seems like he's measured in assessing what he can handle. But I just really like Lindon. And if anything happens to him, I will not be happy. And I'm sure nothing will happen to him because he's the literal main character. But still, anytime somebody's like, we'll be safe, I'm like, just don't say that out loud. It's the jinx. Knock on something, quick. Do they work if they aren't held in the soul space? At about 20% reduced efficiency, which is a pretty high percentage reduction. It's still good, don't get me wrong, but when he said 20%, I was like, oh, yikes, that's quite a hit. But it turns out like everybody is able to take it into their soul space pretty much, except for his parents and sister, because they don't have that going on for them yet. So B. Moore says, to be fair, he's already died once. That's true. So let's see. I'm trying to find the spot. Okay. In an apparent contradiction, weaker souls needed weaker protections against techniques like this, despite being more vulnerable. A defensive construct that was too much for them could cause damage to their channels while purging the foreign energy. Therefore, he seized the weak materials first. He had started carrying around jade remnants with White Fox-compatible Madra so that he could make constructs for his family. These would serve as practice for him, and he wouldn't even need to fuel the Soul Forge. Just being made in this place would grant the constructs more authority than they would have had otherwise. This is the thing that I find so fascinating about the way energy works in this world, is just the presence of the power of the location is important. And we know that's a thing, that's been mentioned in other contexts as well. But every time I'm reminded that has as much of an effect as it seems to, it's wild to me. So he is giving this his full attention, and he is making them for his parents initially, and is thinking, this isn't like perfect, but to be honest, it's my parents, and they are used to straight up trash. So this will probably absolutely wow them and also be effective enough. And it is just quite a ride, you guys, to do the reread and think about how desperate he was to impress them. And now how little it matters to him, really. It's not to say that he doesn't even think about it, but it's like so effortless now because he is so powerful that it's just not anything. And what freedom. I love this for him. So at this point he mentions Zeil, and I love this. Dross is like, well, he didn't mention him. Was that because the Silent King wasn't aware of Zeil? Or was the Dreadgod playing some game? Maybe this was a mental trick to get Lindon to overlook Zeil, or to get him to focus on Zeil too much, as the one exception. Or maybe it's a nefarious trick to get us to overthink this. Bless you, Dross. Honestly, that was kind of what I was thinking. And it did, like, later on, when we had that moment where Zeil's about to take one of the boxes and Lindon is like, that's for mercy. I was thinking, Lindon, her mom's a monarch. She has an aunt who is a sage. I am sure they can figure something out. And it apparently never occurred to him. It did to Dross, and Dross he just didn't share because he wanted to see this like awkwardness. So because of that, I have a theory here about Dross right now. Have you guys watched What We Do in the Shadows? Because he's giving me Colin Robinson vibes a tiny bit. He's not devastatingly boring, like Colin Robinson likes to get people sort of frustrated and feed on them for this, like, you know, because he's like vaguely passively antagonizing them. But with Dross, it's like he just likes seeing friction. And whether it's between two people or within one person, it doesn't matter. He just likes to cause everybody to stop and go, ugh. And I can't. I don't like it. It's like, at this point, Dross, the purpose that he served in his original personality was a funny commentary on the overall situation, and sort of mocking Lindon a lot of the time, and just kind of, he would enjoy the awkwardness of certain situations because he found it funny, but it was always in this sort of like gentle ribbing kind of way, and it felt very petty. This is fairly similar in some ways, actually, but it's a lot darker. He's being mocking and sort of instigating shit in a way that feels like it's higher stakes and more fucked up. You know, it's a life or death kind of mocking versus before, which was just kind of like interpersonal relationship sort of mocking. And I just don't really know what to make of that. He's like the voice in all our heads that causes us to second guess everything we do. And I say all of us because I'm assuming everybody kind of has this voice in their head, and maybe some people don't, and that must be very nice for you, but fuck off. Most of us, I think, do. And his whole just energy of like, it's completely futile. Well, it'd be kind of fun if it were futile. There's like a part of us, I think, that thrives on drama that we like to feed with like little petty things and sort of push to the side. And Dross is sort of like, what if that got really out of control and came to the forefront a lot? I don't know. So then Lindon begins to sort of press Dross and ask how he's feeling. And Dross says, I can never be certain whether I would be more effective with my original identity, Dross giggled, but I would not take such a risk as to find out. Who would sell their soul for a chance at power? Lindon had resolved to grow used to the new dark-minded Dross, but it was difficult. He could work with this Dross, even like him, but he wasn't quite the same person Lindon had grown attached to in the first place. Lindon missed his friend, and Dross knew it. I am more effective than I have ever been. Perhaps there will be no returning me to who I was, and no need to. Will you throw me away, then? I'm not going to throw you away, Dross. Then you had best grow used to me. Think of me as one of your organs. I'm just as functional to you as a liver, and I can be just as squishy and sticky. I'll take your word for it, Lindon said. He tried to bury his disappointment. Dross wiggled through the air, enjoying Lindon's inner conflict as though savoring a song. Lindon shoved the topic aside and returned his entire focus to the creation of the constructs. I hate this so much. It was interesting that he says, will you throw me away then? Because we know that Dross was really worried about Lindon abandoning him. And that is one of the final things that is said at the end of the previous book, is that because Lindon hasn't abandoned him, he doesn't feel afraid. And this made me wonder if this is some sort of test. Like, is he fucking with him to see if there is a point he can push Lindon to that would cause him, you know? Because, like, some of us kind of can do this. I don't know if I want to get too psyched out on this because I need to move on. But if you've got abandonment issues, you can sometimes do this weird thing where you push people to get them to abandon you, to prove yourself right, that everybody will always do that to you. And it's this weird, fucked up, like, self-fulfilling thing that you kind of don't even quite realize you're doing. And part of me is like, Dross, is that what's going on here? Because something about this just doesn't feel quite natural to me. And that's not to say like he's faking it exactly, but I don't know. There's just something here. Zajegi says, I have to say this new Dross is really growing on me. I mean, I don't think he'd be as fun to actually be around, but he's kind of hilarious if you're just a bystander. That's honestly kind of how I've always felt about Dross. Like, if I had him in my head, he would just rag on Lindon so bad sometimes that I was like, man, you calm down, Dross. Jesus Christ. He is more aggro right now, but I've always sort of been like, he's much more fun to see third person than it would be to like have him as your internal monologue all the time. So he works on these for a while, and it takes a couple of hours, and as soon as he steps outside, he finds himself like in this weird kind of underwater world in a bubble of air, and he's going, what the fuck is happening? And here comes Northstrider. And Northstrider is really getting on my nerves. I am not interested, kiddo, in your fucking excuses. So, Northstrider demands, why did Ethan send you here? Tell me what you know of his plans and I will let you live. And y'all, I don't know why it didn't occur to me that the Monarchs were all going to think that Ethan's little troop were all in on his shit, but it genuinely did not occur to me. I didn't even think of it. And it turns out it's definitely what they all seem to think. Later on, Northstrider's talking to Reigan Shen, and he calls Ethan a viper who's left his eggs here. Which, look, Ethan was trying to, like, prep them for a thing. Like, that's not to say that he didn't have influence and plans, but they seem to be assigning a motivation to these kids that is much higher level and nefarious than what they actually, which is simply to just continue gaining power and try and ascend, which is what every sacred artist is always after, basically. So their motivations aren't really any different than anyone else's, but everybody seems to think that they're part of this like big plot and they're setting shit up on his behalf. And if they set anything up on his behalf, it's either going to be because A, it was what they wanted and it happened to align with what he wants, or B, they aren't aware that he's playing them. But Lindon has to take a soul oath here, saying that he swears on his soul that he did not know who Ethan really was and that Ethan didn't share anything. And this, like, moment, I thought that this line really, it hit me in a way that, like, I know that this is the whole point of what's been going on with Ethan. But when Lindon sums it up, I was like, God damn, that is crazy. His only goal was to raise people who could keep up with him. From what I've learned of Osmanthus Aurelius, I believe he ascended into the heavens and found that he had no peers even there. I know that's the thing, but for him to just say it like that, I was like, fucking Christ. I know. I even spent, like, you know, the last episode, or was it the one before, yelling about how you're trying to say he's not the most important guy in the universe, but he disappeared and the universe began to break apart. So I know that he is the most, but, like, just saying it, like, it's crazy. It's crazy. So finally, Lindon is like, hey, so I want to ask you a question. Why haven't you ascended? And Northstrider gets pretty defensive here. I really liked to see that he kept talking beyond the point that he normally would, because for me that speaks of a person whose conscience is pricking them and they know they aren't right, but they're doing the thing with a really logical sounding motivation that feels like it should be ironclad, and there's just something in them that kind of is aware it's not cool. And so they overtalk, you know? So he says, I will transcend this world when I will not be treated as a slave. I will not bow to the Abaddon. I have traveled my own path for centuries, and I will not stop now. And this is the thing, is that I don't know if he is really in danger of being treated as a slave. Like, I could see that maybe he is, because obviously the situation with Ethan is that they're like, oh, well, maybe we'll just turn him into a living weapon and use him, and he won't have any say, which is insane. That is enslavement. But also, that's him. I should be calling him Azrael. That's Azrael. I don't know that Northstrider's Azrael. Like, I don't know that he's important enough that they would do that. So it's difficult for me to tell how much of a danger that really is, because we don't know what happens immediately after ascending. Fury ascended, and we haven't seen anything of him. So I have no idea how that works, or what the, like, requirements are for ascending. Like, do you have to agree to a work study program before you get to transfer? You know what I mean? And then I will not bow to the Abaddon. Just really feels like straight pride. That's not like I'm a slave. That sounds much more like I don't like being where there are more powerful people than me, which, oh, well, fuck yourself. I don't care. Get out. That's my energy. And that seems to be Lindon's energy also. And I have traveled my own path for centuries, and I will not stop. Now, nobody's asking you to stop traveling your path, you big fucking mysterious geek. They're just saying to not stay here where you're putting millions of lives at risk all the time. And Lindon says something, the lives lost, and he says, I did not create the Dreadgods. I oppose them where I can, but I will not be forced from my home before I am ready. You didn't create the Dreadgods, but you know very fucking well what this is. Like, that's so much. Well, I didn't start this. They started it. So, grow up. Like, for real. Get over yourself. You're being a child, and it's embarrassing. Like, ew. You know? Ugh. And this is when Lindon tries to end the conversation, and he continues, it's not as simple a situation as you believe. How many lives do we preserve by minimizing conflict between one another? If we all left, then the first herald to advance could annihilate an entire hemisphere of the planet with no one to keep them in check. Okay. Shut up. Get out of here. This is so pitiful. No. It could be even worse if we weren't here. Could it, though? Or are you just saying that because you're trying to come up with scenarios to scare him into thinking that this is better? Because I don't buy it. I think you're full of shit, and I think you know you're full of shit, to be perfectly honest. He is just lying to himself. I just am not impressed. I thought better of you, Northstrider, and I shouldn't be that surprised considering the ways that you have treated people at points. He has had, moments of genuinely looking around and being saddened by, like, the loss of life. We have seen in his POV that there are times when he seems to care, but they feel few and far between, to be honest. And I just don't know that if you get to the point of Monarch, you have it. I know I've made this comparison already, but it's like getting rich. People who get rich have a really hard time staying grounded and remembering what it is like to be a person. And they begin to inhabit this other sort of parallel universe where things that were never priorities before suddenly become hugely important, and things that had been priorities they no longer even have to think about because it's a given now, because they have everything they will ever need. And that's part of why so many comics who become super famous stop being funny, because they can't relate anymore. And so their comedy doesn't hit because they just don't seem to be like grounded in reality the way they were, in the way that made them relatable. And that's what makes comedy work, is being able to relate to the moment. And so I feel like the monarchs just get to a place where they lose their humanity somehow, because they just seem disconnected and they can't get past their own like fucking egos, you know? So anyway, I'm just kind of like annoyed with him. And it's very interesting because Reigan Shen decides to step up later. And while I was like, sweet, we could use the help, he's also like, well, we need to kill everybody that was in Ethan's pack. And I'm like, man, you couldn't just let me root for you for like a minute, could you? You just had to ruin it. So Zeil says, I mean, to be fair, Lindon is planning to force the monarchs to ascend, so they are kind of right in worrying about him, but just not because Ethan has some secret plan, but because Lindon is a decent person. That's exactly it, Zeil. That is the thing. They think that Ethan has planted a plan with them, when really what I think is going on is that Osmanthus just has managed to keep his like connection to his humanity, probably due to horrific losses and failures, and all of the murder, for lack of a better word, that he's had to commit over the thousands of years has gotten to him. And so he is looking for other people who are managing to hold on to their empathy and humanity as they ascend, which is hard to find, probably, based on what I'm seeing. And the monarchs are like, oh, you're a threat because you're working with him, when maybe their ideals just align because they care about people in a way that you just don't anymore. And maybe it's just that simple. So Be More says, being fair, this one part of this argument is correct. Getting all the current monarchs to ascend doesn't solve the problem, and the next herald that wants to will just restart the issue. Lindon needs some kind of solution to prevent future monarchs before getting rid of the current batch. It's true. As Lindon says, I'm sure there is no perfect solution. Jivan, I hope I'm saying your name right. Or is it Givan? Jivan? The Abaddon are an army, and armies have rules. He would be a fresh cadet being forced to do tasks he doesn't want. Remember Kyrian and how much of an ass he was. Now imagine he's your boss and there's no HR. See, this is my question, Jivan. Is ascending, do you just automatically become a recruit? Like, that's what's unclear to me, is how it really works. Because Fury ascends and he's able to take his whole family with him. And what I found surprising was the family being able to go with him. It suggests that the way he's going to be living isn't what I was thinking, which was, I'm thinking you ascend alone because you are about to embark on like a journey that you can only take by yourself because it's growth and service. But the fact that he's got his family with him suggests to me that he gets to go home at the end of the day and put his feet up and watch some TV and have his dinner. So it might not be. Maybe his family just lives and he goes away. Like it's a deployment kind of situation. I'm really curious about like the logistics of it all, unsurprisingly, because that's always what I'm obsessed with. So anyway, you guys, I'm sorry. I have to move on because I'm getting bogged down. This is when Lindon says there surely is a better solution than letting monsters roam loose. And he says, then look for one. You have draws, research, plot, calculate, simulate, bring it to us. But if you cross me, I will kill you. I do not wish to be your enemy. Then watch yourself. When you are a monarch yourself, only then will you understand the burden we carry. So, what I am hearing is that basically we gotta burn it down. Right? Like, the whole system is fucked. And that has been sort of what Ozzy... I can't believe I was about to just call him Ozzy. That is so disrespectful. I'm definitely going to keep doing that. I think that's what Ozzy wanted. He just doesn't like the way shit's set up, and he knows it doesn't work, and it's like unsustainable. So he's like, how about we don't do it that way? And everybody's like, well, we can't just change it. And he's going, why not? Yeah, we can. And I kind of feel like that's gonna be I'm interested. Okay. So he leaves, and Lindon is standing there going, God damn it, I really shouldn't have like kind of talked back to him, because now he knows where I stand on everything, and it would have been cool if I kept that shit to myself and played it a little closer to the vest. And that's when we go to Northstrider's POV, and he is at Nine Cloud City, which I want to say it's being attacked by the Weeping Dragon, but it's not even like really being attacked. It's kind of a side effect thing. The way that the Bleeding Phoenix just waking up and being around causes all these little, like, you know, blood spawn. And this is tiny little dragons with blue gold storm mantra, which honestly sounds dope as hell. It's the kind of thing where I'm like, look, I know we're all going to die, and that's very unfortunate, but pretty, very cool. And he has to meet up with Sha Miara, who is still in disguise as her mother. And they're sort of circulating like, oh, it looks like her mother might be ready to hand on the mantle because they're keeping up this facade. And I'm like, how long are you guys going to like do this? Apparently they're circulating this rumor because they now think she's going to be finally ready to actually rule. And I hope they're right. She is quite overwhelmed here. This is a really like one of those moments where I feel for her, actually. She has been such a brat. And then there's this, and I was just like, oh, fuck, this is hard. Like, she is watching her city as collateral damage. They're not even directly under attack, being overwhelmed. And she knows there's almost nobody who can help that isn't already being drawn somewhere else that's also under attack somehow. And she's clearly kind of like staring into the abyss at this point, desperate for help, willing to ask, but there aren't a lot of options. And there's just a sense of exhaustion to her. I just felt really bad there, you know, like, So anyway, she says, would you assist us? And he says, I am not its opponent anymore. There was no shame in that. The prisoner in the labyrinth, Subject 1, had died. Its power had been distributed among the other Dreadgods. I don't know that I realized that's what happened. And maybe that's mentioned, because, again, I'm doing my reread, but I haven't reached the previous book yet. I'm currently in Ghostwater. So good. But that sucks. Not long ago, a monarch might have been able to kill a Dreadgod. It still would have been a legendary feat, but within the realm of possibility. What stopped it from happening was the cooperation between the Dreadgods and the knowledge that while one remained dead, the others shared its power. That just really sucks. I hate that. So finally, we have the moment where there is this sound. Space cracks in half. This giant cloud ship rolls up. And it's fucking Reigan Shen. And he offers help. Sha Miara is like, word? Yes. Northstrider, meanwhile, is like, hold up. I'm sorry. Can you empty your pockets and walk through this metal detector? Because I do not know why you are here, but I don't like it and I don't trust it. And you are going to have to prove several things to me before we engage in conversation of that nature. And honestly, I can't even be mad because Reigan Shen is a fuckboy. So that is the right call to make here. And Reigan Shen basically is like, hey, Northstrider, I don't know if you noticed, but a destroyer was just here. You fucking asshole. Shit is different now. Okay? And I was like, he is not wrong. Like, I don't agree with his assessment, which is obviously to take out our entire crew, and I don't want that. But Reigan Shen just straight up being, you dickhead. I think I have some sense of proportion and knowing when to have self-interest and when to keep our entire planet from being overrun. I'm not an idiot. I was like, look, Reigan Shen, I respect this and I agree with you. It's just that you're such a fuckboy. If you weren't like that, maybe he wouldn't react this way. So you do kind of have yourself to blame. But it was very funny. And B. Moore says, okay, now I need a blooper with Reigan Shen trying to get through airport security and being repeatedly stopped as he unloads his void gaze. Honestly, the idea of him just like, there was something like that in something I watched recently where they kept like taking weapons out of weirder and weirder places. But yeah, that would be a fun bit. So this is when he says there was a viper among the cubs and it left its eggs behind. Until we're rid of them, everything else is a distraction. I examined Lindon myself. I find there to be no immediate danger. It will be too late to speak of danger when the stars vanish once more. Until the true threat is gone, we must preserve all the strength we can. We are on the same side now, Northstrider, whether you can see it or not. And then he heads in for war. So that sucks. It's great, but also. So this is when we go to Windfall. And Yeren is really suffering from the headache from the Bleeding Phoenix. She's like not doing super well. And it's interesting because earlier the Silent King called her a defective herald, I think was the word that he used. And I had thought that the problem she had was fixed as the gift for the Uncrowned King tournament. That they were, and the fact that she's still considered defective is upsetting to me. I thought what they did was supposed to have kind of fixed that. And I guess not. And she tells them about the battle in the 8-Man Empire. And she kind of jokingly suggests that they join up. And Lindon starts to be like, well, I don't think. And she's like, I'm kidding. We're not doing that. And then we go, there's this moment that I thought was so funny. When she's like, so you had a one-on-one with the Silent King. And he says something like, yes, apologies, but I have to feed you all to a Dreadgod. And she says, I bet my spine that's exactly how you'd say it. And I was like, oh my God. The idea of Lindon being an agent of the Silent King, but still being just as fucking polite as he always has been, that is amazing. I don't want to see it, but I kind of want to see it like a little. And we have this amazing, amazing moment. They're in the middle of talking, and Zeil just pops up from behind the couch and goes, what are we talking about? And they both stop and like inch away from him and go, dude, what are you doing? And he says, popping out from the couch. I thought it was what Ethan would do. Does it help? Lindon couldn't find the right words. Yeren made a thoughtful sound. Bleed me, but it halfway did. If you're looking for a tip, then veil yourself better next time. We could feel you coming. I'll do what I can, Zeil said gravely. Don't push yourself. Zeil straightened his spine, visibly steeling himself. No, I can do it. To cheer you up. I swear to God, this is one of the funniest moments in this series so far to me. It's just so wild that Zeil is out here trying to cheer them up by acting like Ethan. Like, what? Sure. All right, go for it. I don't know why, but that really got to me. So let's see. I'm trying to find this. Yeah, here is the part where Lindon is starting to ease his way into explaining what he brought. And fucking Dross is like, speaking of the Silent King, we have presents for you. Perfectly innocent presents. Don't we, Lindon? Dross, stop it. You are a messy bitch right now. Truly. Dross is like the guy they cast in reality shows because he's a fucking pot stirrer. You know, he's the guy who they are like, oh, he just likes to fucking provoke people. We definitely need to get him on here. If he were in Top Chef, he would be one of the 2 finalists because they always make sure to make one of the 2 finalists a complete monster so that you are voting for one person in particular and you just have to make sure and watch to the end to see that they didn't win, you know? So anyway, everybody but by name was mentioned except for Little Blue, I think, was not mentioned, and Zeil was not mentioned. Orthos was mentioned, I think, right? I can't remember. But they're part of him, so it doesn't really... I don't know that it's the same thing, but... I mean, he's not part of him, like, he is his own being. I'm sorry, Orthos, I didn't mean to be so disrespectful. But, I don't know. So, he's like, I made these constructs. They'll do best inside your soul space if you can, or against your skin. And he brings a couple over for... let's see, I'm trying to find the spot. Drifted them before Orthos and Yeren. He does mention Orthos. Okay, my bad. And Zeil goes to grab the other one, and this is when we have the back and forth where he's like, that's for Mercy. And Zeil's like, yeah, okay, but I'm right here. And he's like, but you weren't mentioned and she was? And finally Zeil's like, yo, dude, did you forget that she's rich as fuck? She will be fine. It's fine. And Lindon gets really embarrassed and then finally has to do the whole, like, I would be honored if you would take that construct. And Yeren just sort of has to, like, pat him on the knee comfortingly because it genuinely was a really embarrassing moment and Dross just wanted to see it happen. Yeah. So this is when everybody puts it into their soul spaces. And he says, I don't think that they should be necessary. I do, Dross interrupted. But if they are, they should negate the Silent King's technique as soon as it's placed. And Zeil says, well, this is only an issue if we're staying here. And all of them look at him. And again, I keep forgetting that Yeren doesn't know about the thing with the monarchs and the Dreadgods. I for some reason have it in my head that she was there. And it was Mercy that was there. Is that right? I know there was somebody else with Lindon, wasn't there, when he found out? Ugh, I can't wait to get to that book, guys. So much more will be clear here by the time... It shouldn't be long. I'm tearing through these books, but... essentially, Lindon has to convince them all that leaving is not a good idea. And it's not like Zeil could leave anyway. He isn't ready. Orthos doesn't really seem to have any interest. And Lindon has to sort of have a talk with him about that later. And so he finally has to be like, what we need is to work together because I said I wouldn't leave you behind and I won't. But in order to not do that, you guys are going to have to really pick it up. You're going to have to do your own work. And then he has these like little projections that Dross does for each of them. And it sounds like this is the setup for like a series of heists. And I cannot tell you how incredibly down for that I am. I really hope that's what this is. You guys know I love a good heist. Do you know that actually? I've said it in a lot of places. So I'll say it again here. I love a good heist. And clearly that's not all it's going to be because Yeren is psyched. She's like, oh, we can just kill everybody and take whatever. And he's going, so sorry. No. We're going to have you work with them and like learn from them. And she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, I know. I'm so sorry. But for some of them, it's just going to be a heist. And I am just So excited. So this is, he shows a bunch of riches in the projection to Yeren and is like, all right, you are just going to need a lot of stuff to help you advance. And really, learning some techniques from them can put you in the same position that I am in, where I just drop power out of people, and that's how I level up. And it's sort of a cheat, but we can make that cheat work for you also. And then, I love this moment, even the monarchs aren't likely to sponsor us with so much, especially on short notice. We will need to find another sponsor. Or, if they aren't willing, we could find an involuntary sponsor. To rob blind, Dross whispered. Yeren brightened at the thought. I will bet she did. And then we go to Zeil, and there is this construct, a formation array that the projection he's looking at, and he's like, I don't even know what the fuck this does. What is this? And Lindon has to kind of include it with the thing with Orthos. So Lindon has to sort of cajole Orthos, because Orthos is fine with staying with Underlord. And Lindon is like, look, you know that I'm not okay with staying. And even if you don't advance, I can still take you with me. And that's fine. But do you want to not advance any further? And he is kind of embarrassed. And he says, it's different for us than it is for humans. What if I can't? And Lindon says, you can. And this is where Dross pops up. With a dragon remnant, behold the souls of the ancient black dragons. You could inherit their power and the echoes of their continent-spanning might, and advance as quickly as any sacred beast dares. But if you inherit their memories and their titanic willpower, will you still be yourself? Or will you only be their vessel? And then he fades back. What a fucking drama queen. And Orthos is like, how would I not know that if there's a remnant of a black dragon out there? I live in Serpent's Grave. And Lindon is like, yeah, it's not there. It's in this place that's locked in time. And the thing that we're going to get for Zeil controls time. And they're like, oh, wait, what? Again, fucking Dross has to show a projection of a woman using this time construct thing, and it doesn't work and she gets killed. And I'm just like, Dross, why? Why do you have to be like this? So time can be slowed, accelerated, or temporarily frozen in a local radius, Dross explained. Truly an unrivaled power if it can be recreated. And yeah, if you'd like, because Zeil points to that and says, that gave me no confidence. If you like, we can find something for you other than the ability to control time, Lindon suggested politely. No, I still want it. So that is their thing together. And then he has to break the news to Yeren that she needs to learn how to work with Red Moon Hall. And it turns out little Blue should go with her. This is interesting to me. She's not going to be with Lindon. I find this so unnerving. I don't like it. But he says that she can eat these blood shadows. And if she can consume them, she can gain as much power as she wants. The more developed you are, Blue, the more of my power you can handle. And she is obviously a little overwhelmed at the idea. But she's on board. So that's everybody's sort of game plan going forward. And then he tells them that he's going to Moongrave. And he gives an explanation that is going to be acceptable without sharing all of his information with her that he is not allowed to. I think we can modify the Book of Eternal Night. I can set Mercy up to use her entire book. She might be the fastest to advance out of all of us. If everything works as we hope, We should be able to help the monarchs fight against the Dreadgod in only a month or two. By this time next year, with a little luck, we could be taking down a Dreadgod ourselves. And you know how to kill them? Zeil prompted. I do, Lindon said. Zeil held his hammer upside down and ground its head into Lindon's floor. That new flame of determination was still bright behind his eyes. Then I'll be there. So, Lindon delivers the constructs to his parents, and then he goes to bring one to his sister. So he does this on the DL because he is basically a fucking celeb, and he knows it will cause a major fuss if he announces to Cassius that he's coming. I would like to state for the record that I am absolutely desperate to know what Cassius thinks of Ethan's ascension. I don't know if ascension is even the right word, because he had descended? Reascension? I don't know. But Cassius, you guys know, he had a very love-hate relationship with Ethan. Oh, he must be furious. I mean, oh God, I really like Cassius too. I think you guys probably remember how much I wanted more of his wife too, because she sounded so badass. I'm a little bummed that Lindon doesn't tell him, and I get why, but I just want to see him. So anyway, he senses Kelsa's spirit near Jai Long's, and I'm like, oh, do you? And when he walks in, Jai Long has his arms around her, in that way that the ghost of what's-his-face is helping her do pottery in Ghost, where it's he's helping her do pottery, but also that's definitely not what this is about. And he gets really mad. And this is something that I feel is so great about doing this reread, is the reminders of all the shit that Jai Long has pulled. He has done certain things with an element of honor. He has drawn the line in places that I appreciated, because I, at the time, was reading him as a pure antagonist. I mean, he was an antagonist. As a pure villain, really, would be the better word. And every time he sort of stopped himself and was like, what am I doing? That is fucked up. I was like, oh, good. You have some moral guidelines that you operate with. So I gave him a lot of credit here and there based on my low expectations of how he was going to behave. And also based on my understanding of his disgust at his own abandonment, but especially the absolute disregard of his sister. She is simply discarded like she's a broken toy, and they had the resources to help and they just don't. So his rage on that point, I really, really understood. And as much as I did not care for a great deal of what he did, there was a part of me that was kind of like, ooh, but I get it. I do get it. I don't like it, and I don't think you should, but I get it. And over time, because I did sort of really love him as a character, that all faded for me to the background. Because I forget how little time has actually passed and how fresh a lot of that would still be to Lindon. So he gives Kelsa the construct, and she's so flustered and awkward. There are others he's given her for protection as well, and he notices that they're in pockets of a robe that she's tossed in the corner of the room instead of on her person, which is where they should be to actually do anything. And Lindon's really frustrated because he's like, she just does not get it. She doesn't understand how intense the danger actually is. But he leaves, and Jai Long follows him and says, forgive me. We did not intend to keep our relationship a secret. And what is your relationship? We're not sure yet, but I know that I have treated you badly, and I would understand if you held a grudge. I don't, Lindon said. Jai Long nodded with a serious expression. I know. When you returned as powerful as you are, I was prepared to die. I would have killed you, Lindon said, if I was like you. Zeil paled. I have talked about Lindon's big dick energy before. This is the biggest dick energy of the series so far. This moment of just, I am going to hold you the fuck accountable, sir. It's not just water under the bridge. I don't hold a grudge. That is not the same as I forgot everything you did and think you're just a different person now. Are you a different person? And this, it's so good. I do not look favorably on those who keep coppers imprisoned as slave labor, or who killed jades in their beds over a blood feud. I will take responsibility for my actions. I don't want that person in my sect, and I don't want that person in my family. Is that who you are? Zeil couldn't hold Lindon's gaze. I don't know. Decide. And tell Kelsa what you've done. I tried. She said she didn't need to know. That sounds like an easy problem for an underlord to overcome. Lindon removed the veil around his spirit. He didn't particularly increase the pressure, but Zeil found it harder to breathe. Lindon took a step forward until he loomed over Zeil. He wasn't much taller than the Jai Underlord, but he loomed nonetheless. With white fingers, he tapped the twin star emblem on Zeil's outer robe. However you decide, remember that I will take anything you do while wearing that symbol as though it is done in my name, and you will answer to me for it. Tell me now if anything I have said is unclear to you. I mean, damn. Zeil drops to a knee, which I understand, and Lindon says, I am glad, and helps him back up very quickly. Lindon's not getting off on Zeil kneeling. Like, his ego is just not the factor. It's truly just, what kind of fucking person are you, though? And that's what makes this energy so hot, is that it's pure. I am holding you accountable for your own shit. I am not bringing my own personal baggage into it. I am going to name very dispassionately the things that you did without any necessary, embroidery, because they don't need it, because they were objectively fucked up, which you have to know. And if she knows, she will agree, are fucked up. And the assertion that, I didn't tell her because she said she didn't need to know, and Lindon being like, did I ask what she said? No. I asked if you told her, and I'm hearing no, which is not what I want to be hearing. So rectify that, because she deserves to know, and I do think that may change a thing or two. And I think you know that. And that's why you haven't. I mean, it's good shit, man. It's good shit. And McShard says, I like how this isn't the stereotypical territorial shovel talk with the siblings' new partner. Yeah, that was the thing that I thought we were getting for a split second before I realized, wait, no, it's Zeil. And then when he recounts everything to him here, I was like, especially the saying, I don't want a person like that in my family. It's so reasonable. And it's worrying about the health and safety of his sister in a genuine way, not in a performative masculinity. Don't fuck with my sister, dude, or I'll fuck you up. Genuinely, you're a serial killer, dude. You went and killed your own family members because you were mad at things that the rulers did. And you have to realize that's just insane. And I that's just so utterly reasonable. You know, he is not out of line at all here. And then we get this last moment with Dross that's been highlighted like 200 times according to my Kindle. Dross drifted up from Lindon's spirit. The dark purple spirit didn't say anything, but pointed to his one eye and then to Jailong. Jailong shuddered. Dross is like, I'm watching you. Oh, Dross, I don't like how creepy you are, but if you can like weaponize that creepiness against guys like this and make sure they stay in line, I am not mad at that. Like, I really do like Jailong, and I believe he's capable of change. I really do. But he needs to get over some shit. He needs to go to therapy and come to terms with what happened with his family and let that go and drop some of his like paranoia, because it's clearly still, and I didn't even mention, because I'm so overwhelmed by Lindon's handling of this, that Jailong, apparently his face is fixed. He ascended to Underlord, and so now he doesn't have that like crazy serpentine. He still has light that comes out of his mouth, evidently. So that part of his gold sign remains, but his actual face, it seems, is fine. And I think that's a pretty big deal, and it's funny to me that it just got completely eclipsed by what happens after we find that out. Sorry, so Asher says, sorry, that was not supposed to be a question. It says, always watching Wazowski. Oh my God, Wazowski. Completely. I forget about that, but that's exactly right. And also, I just have to mention, he tapped the twin star emblem on Jailong's outer robe. After having, like, finished Black Flame, no. Was it? What's the one? It's not Ghostwater. It's Skysworn, right? That's the one where they actually have the duel. And it's wild to read that now and know that Jailong is going to end up serving in a sect that Lindon founds. Like, if you had said to Jailong that was in his future, I can't imagine him being remotely okay with it. Like, not only would he try to deny that was even possible, he would probably laugh in your face. But I am sure he could not imagine a future in which he would be cool with that being where he wound up. And how would Lindon not just want to murder him? I mean, you know what I mean? The way that this has worked out, I really want to be like Lindon in ways where I'm like able to look past the pettiness and anger of what somebody has done to me personally and welcome them into a community I have made because I think it can help them be better and leave my ego out of it. And I am not super good at that, y'all. My ego is awfully big and it is loud. And I would like to learn how to muzzle it. I really would. And Lindon is real mad in this scene, and he manages to like just keep it locked, and he uses it to fuel what he's saying, but he doesn't let it take control of him. And that's the part I'm not great with. So anyway, intense big dick energy. Loved it so much. Was so satisfying. And it's very interesting to me that when he asks Jai if that's who he is, Jai doesn't say not anymore. He says, I don't know, which feels a lot more honest and a lot more, it's just a lot more interesting. It suggests that we're going to see more of a journey from him than we have so far. That it's because, unfortunately, my attitude of just sort of leaving it by the wayside as time goes on and forgetting about everything that he had done in the past, a lot of books would sort of treat him that way and act like, well, clearly he's changed. But they wouldn't really necessarily like outline that specifically. And it looks like it's going to be dealt with more directly than I was expecting because he seemed like such a secondary side character. I didn't really think it was going to be too important. And I am delighted to find out that I'm wrong. And I'm also really happy that Jai Long is still a character, because y'all know how much I loved him from the start. I really liked him and was just fascinated by him. And his sister with the power that she has now, and all of this just being the link that they had to his family. So this suggests that he's going to continue to be like kind of an important factor, and I like it. I'm very excited. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I am over time as usual. What else is new? I tried to start right away so that I wouldn't do this, but to be honest, this is the last recording of this evening, and so I was like, I have nothing coming up after this. I'm just going to keep talking. I have broken up the chapters for the remainder of the book, so it's evident if you drop down the schedule, you can see which chapters are for next episode and the one after that. There is one particular date that Candace accidentally input wrong. She put 2 episodes happening on October 4th. So I do have to like fix some of the dates after that point. But otherwise, you should be able to follow it. And I also put the breakdown in the Cradle No Spoilers channel on Discord. So if y'all want to be up in that Discord, it's going to be so much fun once the series is done. And I decide to cover it with Rashawn. And I'm going to dip into that Cradle spoiler channel and go fucking nuts. I can't wait. Anyway, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap. Thank you again so much. Thank you to Andy again. And I will be seeing you soon. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.